All right, hey there, 8th graders, and welcome to today's Explainer. We're jumping right into something that is literally going to impact your everyday life. I know, sometimes you're sitting in class, staring at a whiteboard completely covered in numbers, just thinking, when am I ever going to use this stuff? Well, today's the day we actually bridge that gap. We're taking that classroom math and connecting it straight to your wallet, your time, and your future. Let's get into it. But hey, before we get completely lost in all the formulas, let's ground ourselves real quick in why we're even learning this. Psalm 90, verse 12 says, "So teach us to number our days, that we may gain a heart of wisdom." You see, learning to calculate numbers isn't just about passing some test. It's actually deeply tied to gaining real wisdom for our lives. When we learn to measure our resources, things like our time and our days, we're literally practicing how to be wise. Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our quick roadmap for today. We'll cover the wisdom of numbers, defining rate of change, calculating slope, some real-world math examples, a homework challenge, and finally, morality, education, and peace. Starting right off with Section 1, the wisdom of numbers. So math matters way beyond the four walls of your classroom. Understanding something like rate of change actually empowers you to make real-world decisions. Think about it. Pretty soon, you're going to be picking out cell phone plans, right? Or you'll be checking the gas mileage on your very first car, just to figure out if you and your friends can afford a road trip. Whether it's in a future career, business, or science, the rate of change helps you measure your progress and predict what's coming next. It's like having a superpower that lets you compare your options side by side, so you can make incredibly smart, informed decisions with your money and your time. Let's think about this conceptually for a second. You know how Jesus used parables? Those everyday, super relatable stories about farming, fishing, or building houses? He used those simple stories to help people understand incredibly deep, complex spiritual truths. Well, applying math to the real world works in kind of the exact same way. We use everyday situations like earning an allowance or just driving down the highway to make sense of abstract math concepts. It totally brings the numbers to life and, honestly, makes them deeply meaningful. Moving right along to Section 2, defining rate of change. Now that we've nailed down why this matters, let's look at the actual math. So the crucial point is really just this. Rate of change is simply another name for slope, but we're applying it to the real world. You've probably heard your math teachers talk about slope a million times. The steepness of a line on a graph. Well, rate of change is just taking that graph right off the paper and dropping it straight into your actual life. Think about abstract math versus real-world math. Abstract math is the stuff you see in a textbook. It's just numbers. You take a y value and you divide it by an x value, boom, done. But real-world math, that's where the magic happens. The key difference here, the secret ingredient really, is adding units. Instead of just saying, okay, 10 divided by 2 is 5, real-world math says $10 divided by 2 hours is $5 per hour. See the difference? Those units are what literally give the numbers a job to do. All right, Section 3, how to calculate slope. So how do we actually calculate this? Honestly, it's way easier than you might think. Step 1 is to simply divide the change in y by the change in x. Now, usually your y represents your total amount, like total money earned or total miles driven. And your x, that usually represents the time it took, like hours or weeks. Once you divide those two numbers, step 2 is absolutely vital. Ensure your final answer is labeled with units. Remember, a number without a unit out in the real world is kind of just a guess. Let's see this in action with Section 4, real-world math examples. Let's pick up the pace a bit. Now, what's really interesting about this first scenario is just how practical it is. Imagine you're babysitting. You just watch the neighbor's kids for 5 hours, and at the end of the night, they hand you $30. Is that a good deal? Well, let's calculate your rate of change. Your change in y, the total money, is 30. Your change in x, the total time, is 5. 30 divided by 5 equals 6. So your rate of change is $6 per hour. And by knowing this, you can predict that if you babysit for, say, 10 hours next week, you're going to make $60. You're literally measuring your progress. Let's move to another one and see how this builds. Imagine your family is taking a road trip. You've been driving down the highway and you suddenly realize you've traveled exactly 180 miles in exactly 3 hours. Let's find that rate of change. The total distance, our y, is 180. The time, our x, is 3. So 180 divided by 3 gives us a very recognizable number, 60. Your rate of change, or in this case your speed, is 60 miles per hour. Pretty straightforward, right? Okay, here's one more.
Let's say you're saving up for a new video game, or maybe a fresh pair of shoes. Over the course of 4 weeks, you manage to stash away $40. What is your rate of saving? We just take the total money, $40, and divide it by the total time, which is 4 weeks. 40 divided by 4 equals a nice, steady, measurable rate of $10 per week.
And this brilliantly illustrates the real power of math. We just looked at 3 completely different scenarios: babysitting, driving a car, and saving money. Yet the exact same simple mathematical concept solves the whole shebang. You take your total amount, you divide it by your time, and you get this beautiful, clear rate of change that helps you make sense of the world around you.
Next up, Section 5, Homework Challenge. Okay, 8th graders, it's time to fire up those brains. I want you to try and solve this mentally before I give you the answer. Ready? A faucet leaks 6 gallons in 3 hours. What is the rate of change? Got it? You just take 6 divided by 3, and your answer is exactly 2 gallons per hour. Awesome job.
Let's try another one. You go out for a run and you cover 5 miles in exactly 1 hour. What's the slope in miles per hour? Now, actually, this one is a bit of a trick question, isn't it? Because the time factor, our x, is exactly 1. So the calculation is just 5 divided by 1, meaning the rate of change is simply 5 miles per hour. Just remember, whenever your time is already measured in a single unit of 1, your total amount is your rate. Super easy.
All right, final challenge. A train travels 240 miles in 4 hours. What is the speed? Take a quick second, do the math in your head. 240 divided by 4. If you calculated 60 miles per hour, you are absolutely correct. Honestly, you guys are mastering this.
And finally, Section 6, Morality, Education, and Peace. As we bring this explainer home, we really need to connect these new skills back to our core philosophy. Education without morality hurts. Think about it. What is the point of being smart if you just continue to make bad choices? This is deeply important. You could be the absolute best math student in the world. You could calculate the rate of change in your sleep. But if you don't have a strong moral compass to guide how you actually use that intelligence, what's the point? Intelligence without goodness or education without a moral foundation usually just leads to hurting ourselves and hurting the people around us. We don't just want you to be smart. We want you to be wise.
And that leads us beautifully to this wonderful promise from Scripture. Romans chapter 8, verses 6 and 7 promises peace of mind to everyone who keeps their mind spiritual. When we engage with our education spiritually, when we pair our sharp minds with a heart for God and a real desire to do what's right, the result isn't stress or anxiety. The result is a true, lasting peace of mind. And that is exactly what we want for every single one of you as you engage with our lessons.
So I want to leave you with this final, thought-provoking question. Math gives you the power to calculate your path, but what kind of choices will actually guide your journey? Remember, learning to number your days is all about gaining a heart of wisdom. Use the tools we learned today to make really smart decisions, but let your morality and your spirituality be the map that guides where you're going. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, 8th graders. Stay curious, stay wise, and we'll see you next time.